My last video, Audiophile Struggles, ended up being one of my most viewed videos, which is ironic, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But because of it, there were hundreds of comments, and so we need to have a part 2. And so because of your comments, I went through those and wrote down a bunch of additional problems or comments to problems, as well as a bunch of solutions. Got 11 problems we'll bring up and 7 solutions. So stay with me. So what's ironic about the fact that this video ended up being so highly viewed is that I didn't expect to keep it up on YouTube at all. I was just wanting to try out some new equipment, lighting, and so forth that I had. So it was just really an experiment to do a quick thing. It was just a one-take thing, put it up on YouTube to see it. And then, there's a giant flub about 4 minutes in where I just, stumble. And anyway, I expected to pull it down, but gosh, it started getting views and comments, and so I thought, oh well, I guess I've struck a chord here, and we'll keep it going, and glad I did. So anyway, with that, there were a lot of great comments, and I thank you for that, and thought I'd share some of my impressions of the additional problems that were mentioned, as well as the solutions that you guys have suggested. So with that, one of them that was brought up is student debt. We're talking about the struggles of the industry and getting the younger generation involved, and most of us older guys, we started out getting our I started out really young, like a preteen, getting some pretty good equipment, which I'll discuss here. But I think most audiophiles of my generation got into it in college, in their later teens or early 20s. And nowadays, if you make the comparison to those of that age, they have tremendous student loan debts and no discretionary income for the most part. And so that is definitely a big one, a big contributor as to, money, not having the money to get into it. Now, again, most of us when we were young didn't have a lot of money, and a lot of the gear wasn't so expensive as it is today. But with that in mind, there's also inflation to consider. Now, when I was beginning to put together an audiophile, what I'd call an entry-level audiophile system, I was a preteen. I bought them in phases because I had to earn money and so forth. With a paper route and yard work and so forth. I got a Marantz receiver, a 2010. That was like a couple $100. A pair of Marantz Imperial 5G two-way speakers, nice walnut cabinets. That was $180 for the pair. Then I got a TIAC cassette deck, a 160. That was about $260, and I had an AR turntable with a Shure M91 ED cartridge. It was actually my brother's, and he was away from home, and so I was able to use that table. That was $100. So altogether, that was about $740, and in inflation to this day, that would equal about $6,000. So actually, that's a chunk of change. But I think today, if you were to buy a system that was equivalent to that, it would run you around $2,000, maybe even less. So when you think about it, that way, I think that like I mentioned in the first one, that entry level high end audio anyway is more affordable now than it was. Again, when you think about like a CD player, my gosh, $100 CD player is an amazing product. It is very quality. So yeah, I think it's more affordable, and so that's a pro for entry level audiophiles. Another one is profit margin. Today's profit margin, especially when you're talking about high-end audio, is enormous compared to what it was when you had, just the big companies for the most part, Harman & Kardon, Fisher, Sansui, Kenwood, Sony, Pioneer, Panasonic, Technics, all these companies, they were big. Most of them Japanese. They were affordable and they had smaller profit margins. Gosh, now you look at some of the high-end, a lot of the high-end audio out there now is enormously bloated as far as profit margin. I look at some of these and I'm thinking, heck, all they got to do is sell a pair a year and they're good. Not very, not an incentive for anyone but millionaires. So that's kind of a turnoff, I think, for some people. Like I say, though, it doesn't need to be. You don't have to be looking at that kind of equipment. There is really good, affordable equipment. The music is another one. I think that the music, I'm generalizing, of course, but the music nowadays is not as interesting. It's more simple. It's less dynamic. You don't have solos. You don't have the dynamic range. You have a lot of repetitive, simple melodies and formulas, and again, so much of it is all processed, and there's no human elements, and so you combine all those things, and it makes for a pretty uninteresting experience. Again, I'm generalizing. Social media and Fight Club. That's definitely a turnoff for people. Who wants to get into a hobby where you're put down all the time? And on social media, that's something that occurs on a lot of the forums, especially ones that aren't policed very well. Yeah, that's a turnoff. Nobody wants to be a part of that. We need to be, as a group, we need to be inclusive and sharing of our knowledge and our experience. And a lot of the old ways of doing things are being lost because it's not being passed down. Setup, calibration, those kinds of things that make the hobby, one, interesting, two, more enjoyable, are being lost because we aren't sharing that information, and we should be. It's fun to share information. The WIFE audio acceptance factor and dedicated spaces was brought up. I think about this. Yes, things have changed. There is definitely more WAF influence these days than there was maybe in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And back in those times, we all had them. We all had stereo systems back then, and it wasn't an issue. We still have television sets, but yes, the WAF has made an influence as far as trying to make things disappear. But we don't all have dedicated spaces. Hardly anyone has dedicated spaces, and there are ways to make things incognito. And so I don't know that it depends. Again, if you're talking gigantic pieces of equipment, then that's going to be an issue. But otherwise, I don't think for again, certainly for entry level audiophile interest, that the wife acceptance factor should be such an issue. Trade show demos. Definitely, this is a big one to me, that in my opinion, I've been going to trade shows for decades, more than 40 years for sure, probably close to like 50, probably about 50 years I've been going to trade shows. And this is what I think of trade shows in the last, say, 5 to 10 years or so. You're not seeing much acoustic treatment in these rooms. These are hotel spaces that are really small. So they are not designed for sound by any means. They're not good for sound. And so you really need to introduce some acoustic treatment to control those first order reflections, maybe even the help out with low frequencies. Setup, again, I think there's a lot of lost art going on, and a lot of the setups, again, from a bass control point of view, from a soundstage point of view, what I experience is pretty poor. You're going to find that the rooms that have some acoustic treatment in them sound better. And so I think it's interesting that so few do have acoustic treatment in them. But yeah, it's a shame that we don't have so many salons, shops that we can go and get a better experience with. The trade shows are just, kind of to see what's new, not necessarily to hear what's new. The other thing that I would say with trade shows is something that I think is happening quite a bit now that didn't used to, is sharing space without putting the system together prior to the show and making sure that it's synergistic. There are some examples I can think of in recent past trade shows where the system was just not working together, and it wasn't just the room. It's something that needs to be done in advance and make sure that yes, this works well together. Impedance mismatches, things like that are problematic, and you need to know in advance that this is a system that sounds good. Low res sources, and again, the younger generations are experiencing low res, and so they don't have the exposure of high res. And again, now you're talking about air and dynamics and textures that are missing from what they're experiencing. If you've never heard it, you have no idea that it exists, and you don't have that experience that that turns you on to the audiophile world. So yeah, that's definitely something that we are combating. I think there are so many young people that are exposed to their only experience is low res, and their only experience is maybe earbuds, which are real low quality, and then they're multitasking at the same time, so they don't really get involved in the music like we used to with an LP. And it was a thing. It required a bit of effort, a bit of skin in the game, and you opened up that LP, and looked at the art as you're listening. It was just much more of an experience, and unless you're drawn to that or experience that, again, you just kind of miss out on it. So if you're just used to Spotify with earbuds streaming while you're doing other stuff, it's not going to allow you to really get immersed and involved and have fun with the music. Somebody mentioned that I was talking about every time you in most hobbies, whenever you double the money on equipment, you get about 10% better return. And I was just generalizing. But yeah, if I think about it a little bit more, it's probably closer to 15 or 20% improvement every time you double your money. But there's so many variables, it depends. And then number 10, apartments and condos. That's an issue for audiophiles. Well, yeah, it is, definitely. Always has been. Apartments and condos that are newer, say built in the 90s or later, are built with construction that does a much better job of noise control. Isolation and mass is increased over, apartments and condos that were built prior to that, and they're still improving. So I think that's something that is better than it was decades ago. So that's actually a pro. And then, of course, there, just a little plug, are equipment vibration protectors. Place these under your loudspeakers so that the low frequencies don't get into the structure and don't bother the neighbors. Acoustic treatment, again, it's so darn important. The equipment cannot overcome the acoustics of the room. And so a little bit of acoustic treatment for the first order reflections and or for the reverberation times is very inexpensive and so critical. It should be a part of it is a part of the system. It should be thought of as a component of the system. When you're buying equipment, you should also be buying some acoustic treatment so that you can experience the recording at its optimum, at its most. And often a little bit can go a long way. Every room's unique, so this is why there's people like me who can help you out and determine what's important. It's always about the right type of material in the right locations in the right quantity. Okay, so solutions. Got 7 of them to talk about here. More shops. Yes, we talked about that. That would be really nice. We have all been, each of us has a different reference. And that's all about what we have experienced, what we have been exposed to. Most of us really, quote, audiophiles got the bug because of somebody exposing us to great sound. And that was going to be, obviously we didn't read about it. We had to experience it ourselves. So yeah, it would be really nice if we had more shops. The equipment's definitely more affordable. But often the staff is not adequately trained. You can't go to a lot of these shops and expect the experience that you expected back in the 60s and 70s. It's just not there. I'm generalizing. There's plenty of shops where you do have that, but a lot of the shops now are lacking that. So yes, training would be better, and less. We talked about this in the first one. Less snubbing. When you go into a high-end showroom, you want to be treated with respect. You don't want to be ignored or snubbed. And so again, training the staff to be welcoming and inviting. You are planting seeds. You may not be getting a sale today, but like me and pretty much every audiophile, over the years, you'll get your returns. Used gear is another great solution. Gosh, there's so much used gear available that is good quality. So that's a huge one. Headphones. The headphone world has really, really grown. There's so many good headphones now, and headphone amplifiers, and that whole world has really developed, which is really cool, and is definitely exposing a lot of the younger people to high quality audio. And again, in an apartment or a condo or some situation where you can't be playing music, this is a great solution. It's a different solution. It's a different experience than loudspeakers in front of you, and which is what I prefer. But it also has a lot of pros. So that's definitely a good way to expose younger people to affordable, high quality audio. So effort. We talked about streaming and earbuds and multitasking and how simple that is. You just hit play and it just runs, compared to an LP where there's a lot involved. You're selecting the LP, you're handling it nicely, you're cleaning it and the stylus. You've got some art that you can look at. You've got a little skin in the game. Gosh, talk about reel to reel. That's a lot more effort. And I think when you have some effort into it, then you appreciate the experience a little bit more. So that's just something that comes naturally. And it's more relaxing, I think, because it's an intended thing. You're not multitasking. You're listening to the music. You're dedicating some time and some energy to relax and enjoy the music. And you will at a much higher level, of course, than if you're doing something else at the same time. Trade show seminars. Again, to learn the art of setup and calibration and even selecting, you can go on YouTube, but there's just so much misinformation there. Some qualified people at trade show seminars would be a great thing. We do have some of that. I think a lot more of that is needed and would be helpful to be inviting and turn people, just like any trade show, right? You want to have something for the beginners and something that they can grow from. And at these trade shows, if we could just offer, and there are trade shows that do this, if we could just offer free to student passes, that would be an easy and worthwhile thing to do, I think. Number 6, play high-res recordings. There are, often demonstrations with low res, and that's not helpful. And then lastly, acoustics. Again, that's definitely a solution. Again, it often isn't much that you need to invest in acoustics to get the room under a lot more control. Without it, it's and every room's different. It can be really chaotic, and so there's no hope of experiencing what's on the recording. And so, a few panels or even a couple of panels often just can make a huge difference. And a couple of panels is going to cost you less than a decent pair of interconnect. So to me, that is just, acoustics is something in the pro audio world that is thought of first before gear. And in the audiophile world, acoustics is usually not even thought of. So big problem. And if it sounds good, then we're going to have more interest. And acoustics is a component of the system. The room plays with the electronics, and if you don't control it, then it's completely at the mercy of the room. So Hope you got something out of this, and that you comment down below. Please subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.